name is Morgan Pike, and this is my presentation on the state of diversity in education regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. So this presentation is going to look at the educational inequities resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. As we all know, many aspects of education have been negatively impacted by the pandemic all over the world, but this study is going to specifically investigate the effects of COVID-19 on the Revere Public School Districts located in Revere, Massachusetts. So I just wanted to begin by reading this quote, as I feel that it really encaptures what we need to do as an educational system in order to get over the hump of COVID. So this massive disruption to children's education has highlighted the need for governments to devote serious attention and resources to ameliorate, mitigate, and correct the long-standing inequities in education systems that have been highlighted and exacerbated during the pandemic. So the first inequity that I found in the Revere Public School District was food accessibility. So in our district, 70.7% of families are low income. Being low income, they have access to free and reduced lunch, which students are provided every day when they go to school, depending on the income of their family. So most of the students in the district do use that opportunity to be able to eat breakfast and lunch at school. The percent pretty much follows that 70.7% in all of the schools. For students that do take advantage of the free and reduced lunch. But at the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone was sent home, there was no access for those students to get food from the school. So that was a pressing issue for many families in the district. So the first policy that our district created in order to tend to the needs of these families was first to give them accessibility to food. So the district began making meals, breakfast and lunch, available daily for students and families who were in need of this food. The food was distributed to different locations around the district that they could be picked up at. Some of them were at schools and some of them were just at central locations in the city that were easily accessible for families to pick up. And then the last thing was there's fresh produce that was available weekly to be picked up at these same locations. So there was a few options for families who were in need of providing food for their family. The second thing was family engagement. So many of our staff in the district were able to team up with families who could not provide, who did not have the means to be able to provide food for their family. So many low-income household supporters that were part of our district worked hard schedules or were out of a job and could not afford to pay. So something that Lowenhaupt talked about in one of the articles that we read throughout this course describes this as a huge barrier for many low-income and immigrant families. And that was definitely an issue and a challenge that many of our families in the district had, whether they weren't home because of their hard work schedules and weren't able to cook, or they were out of work and didn't have the funds to be able to provide for their family. So as a result of this, teachers teamed up with parents and guardians of those families and transported the school-provided meals and fresh produce to their homes. And additionally, some of our teachers in the district brought those family members of the in-need families to the grocery store and would bring them, and they would pay for their groceries for the week if the families wanted that. So those were two of the things that our district did to help food become more accessible for our students and their families. The second one is accessibility to online learning. So this was the second inequity that I found when looking into this topic. So in our district, we have many low-income families, as I've already mentioned. But with those low-income families, a lot of them did not have access to internet or a device to be able to complete their online learning through. Additionally, many students that were on an individualized education plan or an IEP had a little bit of difficulty with online learning. So this kind of covers a wide variety of things, but in some cases the materials did not meet the needs of the students and they were unable to find success through the online learning that was provided for them, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. And I took this quote from a documentary that was from Week 6's resources, and it says, "It is very difficult to learn when your needs aren't being met." And I know just reading that without any context seems pretty simple, but for many students who are on some type of plan or need a little bit of extra support, not having those supports is really, really detrimental and challenging for them to be able to find success. So a lot of students did have this challenge and had a hard time with finding the same access as other students in terms of online learning. And additionally, some of the students who needed extra support didn't always have an adult present to be able to keep them organized or help them with challenging things that were coming up throughout their online learning. So the policy that was created to be able to adhere to these students' needs were 3 different things. So the first thing was that all students in the district received a one-to-one Chromebook. So this was because the funding in the state increased. So we were able to give every student a Chromebook and a charger of their own to have to be able to do their online learning. The second thing was that internet was offered at a lower cost. So for low-income families, it was $10 a month to be able to pay and get internet at their house, which was a very low deduction in terms of what it normally costs to have internet. The third thing was that teachers allowed or opened their schedules to have office hours for extra help. So each teacher or guidance counselor had an open time slot each day of the week where students were able to log on and have either a small group meeting or a one-to-one individual meeting, either on coursework that was confusing, questions that they had, concerns, or about things that did not relate to school that they needed to talk to someone about. They had the ability to be able to do that. Additionally, students who were on an IEP or who were failing a course were scheduled into meeting in these time frames that the teachers had for their office hours. So they were not given the option. The teacher and the student had to come up with a time that worked best for both of them, and they had to attend in order to get that extra support that they needed and get a little bit more help on things that might have been confusing for them. And then in certain circumstances, some materials were available for students to pick up at the school, but that really wasn't put in place until the end of the school year last year. The third inequity that I found was having an appropriate learning environment for students for online learning. So here, there's a few things about the inequities that I wanted to talk about. So many students who are in our district have other roles at home, and it made it difficult for them to always be able to take part in online learning because of the other commitments and duties that they had to do at home. So some of those are like watching your siblings, cooking food, cleaning, really doing anything that their parents or guardians needed them to do while they were at home. The second one was that some of our students were homeless and or new to the country where they lived with multiple family members in a confined space, which made it difficult for them to learn. So whether they were crammed into a small area or a small house, or they didn't have any place to live and they were homeless, this was a very difficult and challenging thing for some of our students who were going through this during the pandemic. And then the third inequity for this section was that many students struggled with the technological piece of online learning and did not have the support from their guardian to be able to help troubleshoot their devices. Even though the generation that we teach now is very tech savvy, a lot of the programs that are used in school that were implemented during online learning hadn't been seen before, so it was really challenging at first to get all the students on the same page and have them all be informed about the tools that they were using in the throughout the district because they were new. Additionally, I read an article that talked about the serious challenges that newcomers to the country faced during the pandemic. So the article talked about there were numerous challenges such as school expectations, because school expectations change depending on where you go, and if you're coming from a different country, a lot of things are different and you have to learn, and it's very hard when all of that is online and you don't have that face-to-face interaction. How to set up their devices, how to use platforms for online learning, and all at the same time while they're trying to learn a new language. So it was definitely really challenging for that group amongst the rest of the populations. So this policy had a couple different things that the district did to adhere to the students' needs. So the first one was weekly check-ins with students and families. So teachers had scheduled check-ins with certain families and students based on what the school knew, like what was going on with the family. So if they had some type of information about whether the family was homeless or something tough was going on at home, whatever the case was, if the school knew about that, then the teachers were informed and were able to set up weekly check-ins with students and families. And if a student also had an issue or a concern, they were able to set up a weekly check-in. But this really helped those families to be able to have a liaison and have someone to kind of look out for them and someone they could reach out to, which was spoken about in one of the articles we read a couple weeks ago as being comforting for many struggling in immigrant families. Additionally, many students and guardians reached out to the educators/liaisons if the student was not going to be able to attend class, whatever that was for, if it was for watching a sibling or having to do something around the house or for an appointment or whatever it was. The communication grew stronger throughout having these check-ins. The second thing was the technology workshops. So these were workshops that were created for students and offered by teachers that showed the students how to use the online platforms that were being implemented into their classrooms. So sometimes these were offered during class time or after the school day was over. Additionally, a liaison was provided for the English language learner families, as well as there were videos recorded to explain the different platforms that were being used in the class, how to use their Chromebooks, how to sign on to certain things. Those were all video recorded so that the families could also learn as well as the students, and they were translated in most cases. So I just wanted to end with this. So although the pandemic was challenging in a multitude of ways, the members of the Revere Public School District did come together and try to provide the best possible education for its students and families, considering the circumstances that we had during the pandemic. And these are my references. Thank you so much for listening.